The first sound of every morning at the Harbor Light Diner wasn't the sizzle of bacon or the scrape of spatulas. It was the whisper of rain against the glass. Seattle's dawns were like watercolor, gray, soft, and always wet. The kind of mornings where steam curled from coffee cups like ghosts trying to stay warm. For Lena Moretti, 25, this diner wasn't just a workplace. It was her world. 6 booths, 1 counter, 2 ceiling fans that wheezed like old men. The light flickered when the espresso machine coughed, and yet it was the only place that paid her rent and her mother's hospital bills, dollar by dollar, tip by tip. Most mornings, she moved through it like a quiet ballet, balancing plates, refilling mugs, smiling at strangers who never remembered her name. Her apron was faded, her sneakers squeaked on the linoleum floor, and her eyes carried the kind of tired that no amount of sleep could fix. But behind that fatigue was something gentler, a small flame. Every time she tore a napkin from the holder, she'd draw, a quick sketch of whoever sat before her, the fisherman with the cracked hands, the nurse with lipstick smudged from a night shift, even the delivery driver who always whistled out of tune. She said it helped her remember souls. It was her quiet rebellion against a life that had stopped belonging to her. At exactly 7:10 a.m., the doorbell chimed its weary little song, and like clockwork, he appeared. The old man. He moved slowly, his shoulders slightly stooped, his coat, brown tweed gone gray at the elbows, always damp from the sea air. He carried the smell of salt and thyme. His shoes left tiny crescents of rain on the floor. He never looked at anyone, never spoke. He simply walked to the same booth by the window, always the one facing the harbor. Lena had named him in her head before she knew his real one. Mr. Window Seat. He would settle into the cracked mustard yellow vinyl, take off his cap, fold it with surgical precision, and place it beside the sugar jar. Then he would stare out toward the water, as if waiting for a ship that would never come back. That morning, like every morning, Lena approached with her pad and pencil. But she didn't need to ask. She already knew. "Good morning," she said softly. "Black coffee, right?" A single nod. She poured. The coffee rippled darkly into the cup, steam rising between them like a veil. When she placed it down, her fingers brushed his for the briefest moment, cold, trembling, and thin like paper. He didn't pull away. She smiled anyway, though he didn't see it. As she turned back toward the counter, her coworker Theo muttered, "You talked to that ghost again, Lena?" She laughed it off. "He's not a ghost. He's punctual." Theo smirked. "He tips like one." He wasn't wrong. Mr. Window Seat always paid exact change, no more, no less. Still, she refilled his cup without being asked. It was the smallest rebellion of her day. Outside, the harbor was waking up, foghorns low and mournful, gulls screaming overhead. Inside, the world was smaller, warmer. Lena slid a sketchbook from beneath the register and began drawing him, the way his fingers curved around the cup, the furrow between his brows like an old scar. He had the kind of face that made you want to whisper rather than speak, because somehow noise felt disrespectful near him. Halfway through the morning rush, Rosa, the owner, called from the kitchen. "Lena, table 2 needs refills." Lena jolted back to reality, tucked the napkin with his sketch under the counter, and rushed off, leaving the old man alone with the sound of rain. But as she came back an hour later, she noticed something odd. His toast sat untouched, the knife still clean. He was struggling with it, she realized. His hand trembled, the effort tiny but visible. Without thinking, she reached for the knife. "Here," she said gently. He blinked, startled. "I'll help you." She sliced the toast into 4 perfect squares, the butter melting into golden rivers between them. For a second, their eyes met. His were a pale, watery blue, almost silver, and in them was a flicker of something she hadn't seen before. Surprise, embarrassment, gratitude. He gave a small nod. A sound like a low grunt escaped him. Then he returned to eating, 1 square at a time, careful, precise. Lena turned away, pretending to wipe the counter. Her chest felt oddly tight, as if she'd just done something far more significant than cut toast. From that day on, it became their ritual. Every morning, 7:10. Coffee, black. Toast, 4 squares. Silence, warm, shared, and unspoken. Sometimes Lena filled the quiet with soft talk, stories about her mother, about how she used to paint sunsets until the hospital bills piled up. She told him about her favorite museum in Paris, where she dreamed of seeing a real Monet someday. She laughed at her own jokes. He never replied, but she swore she could feel him listening. Some days, when the morning light broke right, she could see his reflection in the window. He would close his eyes for a moment, like her words were a song he almost remembered. Her coworkers teased her endlessly. "Your boyfriend's waiting, Lena." "Maybe he's deaf," someone said. But she didn't mind. The world inside that booth felt different, gentler, honest, untouched by cynicism. There, kindness didn't feel foolish. Sometimes, when the rain turned into mist and the city outside blurred, she'd imagine the two of them as characters in a painting, frozen in time, a girl who still believed in small good things, and a man who'd forgotten how to. She didn't know that someone, somewhere, was watching this quiet ritual unfold, that every word she said, every gesture she made, had already been noticed, recorded, remembered. She didn't know that the old man she served coffee to each day wasn't just anyone, that behind his silence, he carried a secret worth billions. And one rainy morning soon, the door would open, not for him, but for the storm he left behind. There was a rhythm to Lena's mornings now, one that fit between the heartbeat of the city and the soft hum of the diner. Rain outside, steam on glass, the smell of bacon and salt water, and always at 7:10 a.m., the creak of the door and the small metallic chime that announced him, Gabriel Stone. He never said much, sometimes not even a thank you. But Lena had stopped expecting words. There was something about his silence that felt deliberate, like he'd made peace with the fact that the world had nothing left to say to him. So she filled it instead, with stories. She told him about her mother, who had once been a piano teacher before her heart failed her, and the medical bills drowned them both. About the small apartment above a laundromat that always smelled like detergent and loneliness. "Some nights," she said, refilling his cup, "I still hear her playing. Not real, of course, just memory echoing down the hall." Gabriel didn't respond. His gaze stayed fixed on the harbor beyond the window, where gulls circled in the gray light. But Lena didn't stop. She told him how she'd dropped out of art school, how her sketchbooks were now tucked between bills and grocery receipts, how sometimes she drew on napkins because paper felt too expensive. "I used to think if I could paint something beautiful enough," she said one morning, "it would change everything, but beauty doesn't pay rent." The corner of Gabriel's mouth twitched, almost like the ghost of a smile, but it faded before it reached his eyes. She didn't notice. She was too busy drawing him again, the way his hands folded around the cup, how his shoulders curved inward like someone trying to stay small in a world that had once been too big. Theo, cleaning the counter, watched her with an exaggerated sigh. "You do know he's not going to hang your drawings in a gallery, right?" Lena rolled her eyes. "Not everything's about galleries." Rosa chimed in from the kitchen. "She's right. Sometimes art's just to remind you you're still human." "Or," Theo said, smirking, "it's to flirt with your favorite customer." Lena tossed a napkin at him. "He's old enough to be my grandfather." Theo grinned. "Then maybe he'll leave you his coin collection." They laughed, but beneath the teasing was something sincere, a quiet admiration. Because while the others saw just another old man, Lena saw the dignity in his silence. She had studied enough faces to know the difference between boredom and sorrow. And Gabriel Stone, he carried the weight of memory in his posture, the kind of grief that didn't demand attention, only room to breathe. Sometimes she wondered what he'd lost, a wife, a child, a dream, and why he came here, every morning, to this forgotten diner by the docks. Maybe he just liked the view, maybe he liked the quiet, or maybe, somehow, he liked being seen. One morning, the sky was brighter than usual. The rain had taken a day off, leaving behind a rare sliver of sunlight that spilled through the diner windows. The booths glowed golden. The harbor glittered like broken glass. Gabriel arrived, as always, on time. Lena had just finished sketching a pair of fishermen when she noticed something unusual. He wasn't alone. For a split second, she saw another figure at the door, a woman in a charcoal coat, younger, elegant, speaking to him quietly before walking away. Gabriel's hand twitched as if resisting the urge to reach for her, then fell back to his side. When he sat down, he looked different. Tired, even for him. Lena poured his coffee gently. "Everything all right today?" He didn't answer, but she caught it, the faint tremor in his jaw, the way his fingers lingered against the mug longer than usual. For the rest of that morning, neither of them spoke. When he left, she noticed he'd forgotten something, a folded napkin, tucked neatly beneath the edge of the plate. She unfolded it without thinking, then froze. It wasn't blank. There, drawn in pencil, was a portrait of her. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Her eyes, tired yet kind. Her hair tied back, loose strands escaping near her ear. Her mouth caught mid-smile, like she'd just said something hopeful she didn't quite believe. At the bottom, a small set of initials. G.S. Lena's breath caught in her throat. The lines were rough, shaky, but intimate. Someone had watched her closely enough to see what she never showed. The exhaustion beneath her grace, the quiet ache beneath her cheerfulness. She glanced toward the window. He was already gone, his tweed coat disappearing into the fog. Theo leaned over her shoulder. "Whoa, that's you, creepy or romantic?" She didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly like his had when cutting toast. That night, she took the napkin home. She placed it beside her bed, next to her own sketches. Portraits of Gabriel, the harbor, the diner. Together, they looked like a dialogue between two souls who never actually spoke. The next morning, when he came in, she hesitated before approaching. Her heart thumped with something she couldn't name. Gratitude? Fear? A strange kind of kinship? She set his coffee down. "You left this," she said softly, sliding the napkin toward him. He looked at it, then at her, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice so hoarse it sounded unused, he spoke. "You draw," he rasped. "Better than you think." Lena froze. It was the first time she had ever heard him speak. Thank you," she managed, "but I'm out of practice." His gaze flicked to her hands, the same hands that had cut his toast, poured his coffee, drawn his face. "Don't forget what they can do," he murmured. "Hands remember what hearts forget." Then he took a sip of coffee, turned back to the window, and that was that. No more words, just the quiet hum of the diner, the creak of his cup on the saucer, and Lena standing there, trying to understand why a stranger's approval suddenly mattered more than all the years she'd spent chasing validation. When he left that day, she found something else under the saucer. Not a note, not money. 2 quarters and a pencil stub, sharpened to the last inch. She smiled. That night, she sketched again. For the first time in years, her hand moved easily, as if the pencil had been waiting for her to believe in it again. What she didn't know was that the man she drew, the man who sat silently by the window every morning, had drawn far more than her portrait. He had drawn a plan, and soon the quiet exchange between them would ignite something far larger than either of them could imagine. Because sometimes destiny doesn't knock. It just leaves a sketch on a napkin, signed with trembling hands. The rain had returned with vengeance that morning, thick, gray, relentless. It drummed on the diner's windows like impatient fingers, blurring the world beyond the glass into moving watercolor. Inside the Harbor Light Diner, the usual clatter of dishes and chatter of regulars tried to drown out the storm, but Lena couldn't focus. The clock above the counter ticked past 7:10. Her eyes flicked toward the door. No Gabriel. She kept busy, pouring coffee, wiping tables, smiling through the exhaustion. But every time the doorbell jingled, her heart leapt and fell again. By 7:20, she poured a cup of black coffee and set it on the counter, waiting. By 7:30, the cup had gone cold. Theo noticed. "He's probably sleeping in. It's pouring outside." Lena shook her head. "He's never late. Not once." It was true. For nearly a year, Gabriel Stone had come to that same booth at the same time. Rain, shine, or fog. He was part of the diner's rhythm, like the hum of the refrigerator or the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. And now that rhythm felt broken. Rosa, the owner, came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "You look like someone canceled Christmas. You okay, sweetheart?" Lena forced a smile. "He just didn't show up." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "The old man? Maybe he's sick." "Maybe," Lena said softly, but her chest tightened with unease. She'd grown used to his silence, but never to his absence. She busied herself refilling the napkin holders, folding receipts, polishing the counter that was already spotless. Her hands needed something to do because her mind wouldn't stop asking questions. Was he lonely last night? Did anyone know where he lived? Did he have family, someone to call, someone who cared? Outside, thunder rolled. The sky had turned to slate. At 8:05, the bell above the door finally rang. But it wasn't him. 4 men stepped inside, tall and broad-shouldered, their movements too synchronized to belong in a diner. Each wore a black suit, rain glistening on their shoulders, earpieces coiled behind their necks. They looked like shadows that had taken human form. Behind them walked a woman, mid-40s, sharp, elegant, and utterly out of place amid the diner's cracked booths and smell of frying oil. Her coat was long, dark gray, and her hair was pinned in a severe twist. In her hand, a leather briefcase. The air changed the moment she entered. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the sizzling from Rosa's grill seemed to go quiet. Lena froze, a half-filled coffee pot still in her hand. The woman scanned the room with the calm precision of someone used to command. Her eyes landed on Lena and didn't move. Then she walked straight toward her. Theo whispered under his breath, "Okay, this is either a movie scene or a tax inspection." Rosa stepped forward, frowning. "Can I help you folks?" The woman ignored her and stopped in front of Lena. "Are you Lena Moretti?" Lena, Oz blinked. "Yes." "My name is Marion Hale," the woman said evenly. "I'm the legal representative for Mr. Gabriel Stone." The name hit the diner like a dropped glass. Every head turned. Theo muttered, "Wait, the Gabriel Stone, as in Stone Technologies? The billionaire?" Marion's expression didn't change. "The same?" Lena's pulse stumbled. "There must be a mistake. The man who comes here, he's just..." Marion's voice softened a fraction. "Mr. Stone passed away late last night." The words didn't register. Passed away. It felt impossible. She'd just seen him 2 days ago, quiet, steady, alive. She'd poured him coffee, cut his toast, watched the steam fog his glasses. Now he was gone. The coffee pot in her hand trembled. A single drop spilled onto the floor. Marion continued, her tone professional but not unkind. "Per the terms of Mr. Stone's final instructions, we are here to escort you to his attorney's office immediately." Lena blinked, her voice barely audible. "Escort me? Why me? You are named explicitly in his will." The words were surreal, foreign, like lines from someone else's story. Rosa stepped between them protectively. "Hold on, this girl's a waitress. She's not part of any billionaire's business." Marion opened her briefcase and withdrew a document. "Miss Moretti is the only individual listed for immediate contact outside of the Stone family." Theo whispered, "Holy..." But Rosa shushed him. Lena's throat went dry. "I think there's some kind of mistake. I just served him coffee." Marion looked her straight in the eye. "And cut his toast into 4 equal squares every morning." Lena's breath caught. She hadn't realized anyone else had noticed that. Marion's voice lowered, gentler now. "You may gather your things. A car is waiting outside." The 4 men stepped aside, forming a silent wall of dark suits near the door. The rain outside roared louder, as if the world itself wanted to drown out what was happening. Lena turned to Rosa, who looked as pale as flour. "Go," Rosa said finally, her voice trembling. "If he mentioned you by name, it must mean something." Theo tried to lighten the mood. "Well, if they take you to space, bring me a souvenir." Lena gave him a weak smile, but her heart was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the counter, the same way Gabriel had folded his cap. As she walked toward the door, the regulars stared, silent. The bell above the door chimed one last time. Cold air rushed in, smelling of rain and salt and something heavier, change. Outside, a sleek black town car idled at the curb, engine purring like a beast waiting for its cue. One of the men opened the door for her. Marion gestured calmly. "After you, Miss Moretti." Lena hesitated, staring back through the window. The diner looked smaller than ever, the neon sign flickering weakly, the coffee cup she'd poured still sitting on the counter, untouched, her whole world reduced to steam and memory. Then she stepped inside the car. The door shut with a soft final click. Inside, The air smelled of leather and rain. Marion sat across from her, flipping open a folder. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would someone like him put my name in a will?" Marion met her gaze, calm but unreadable. "Because, Miss Moretti, in the end, you were the only person who treated him like a man instead of a myth." The car pulled away from the curb, tires hissing against wet pavement. Through the rain-streaked window, the diner disappeared behind them, swallowed by fog. And as the city unfolded outside, its towers shimmering like cold glass, Lena realized she was leaving one life behind for another she never asked for. She didn't know it yet, but this drive would be the first step into the storm Gabriel Stone had left waiting for her. The kind of storm that didn't come from the sky, but from secrets worth more than gold. The car moved through the rain like a black mirror gliding over puddles. Outside, Seattle blurred, neon signs melting into the wet glass, streetlights bending into streaks of gold. Inside, silence ruled. Lena sat rigid in the leather seat, her reflection ghosted on the tinted window. Across from her, Marion Hale turned the pages of a thick folder, each turn deliberate, precise, final. The faint scent of rain mixed with perfume and paper. Lena wanted to ask something, anything, but her throat refused. She could only watch the city slip by, every corner of it part of the life she'd always known. The coffee shop she couldn't afford, the art store that used to sell her favorite charcoal pencils, the bridge where she once sat, sketching until her fingers went numb. Now, it all drifted behind her, like a memory she hadn't agreed to leave. Marion finally broke the silence. "I understand this must be overwhelming," she said, not looking up. Lena forced a small laugh. "That's one word for it. You're not in any kind of trouble," Marion added quickly, reading her face. "Quite the opposite, in fact." "Then why do I feel like I'm on trial?" Marion's eyes flicked toward her. "Because you're about to enter a world where kindness is often mistaken for weakness." The car slowed before a towering structure of glass and steel that rose into the clouds like a shard of ice. At its base, the name gleamed in brushed chrome letters, Kestrel Tower. Lena stared. "This is where he worked?" "Where he ruled," Marion corrected. Two guards opened the doors. Rain misted against Lena's face as she stepped out. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble steps. She could see her own reflection distorted in the glass facade, a diner waitress standing before an empire. Inside, the lobby was silent except for the low hum of machines and the echo of her footsteps. Everything smelled like money, polished stone, filtered air, old power. An elevator opened with a soft chime. Marion gestured. "Top floor." The ride up was so smooth it felt like floating. Numbers blinked across the panel. 22, 23, 24. Penthouse. When the doors opened, the first thing Lena saw was light. Cold, metallic light flooding from floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. Rain traced lines down the glass like threads of mercury. At the far end of the room stood two people, both waiting. A woman, mid-50s, immaculate in a tailored navy dress, hair coiled in a perfect chignon. And beside her, a younger man in his mid-30s, sharp suit, sharper smirk. He didn't wait for introductions. "So," he said, voice dripping with disbelief, "this is the waitress." Lena froze. The word hit harder than she expected. Marion's tone didn't waver. "Lena Moretti, meet Victor Hale, Mr. Stone's grandnephew, and his mother, Evelyn Hale." Evelyn's smile was paper thin. "We were told there would be guests. We weren't told it would. Be the help." Lena tried to find her voice. I don't understand what's happening. Why am I here?" Victor folded his arms, pacing like a cat, too amused to be angry. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. My grandfather had eccentric ideas about generosity. You must have made quite the impression, serving his coffee." Marion's eyes narrowed. "We'll keep this civil." Victor shrugged. "Of course. Civil. That's what this is, isn't it? A perfectly civil reading of a billionaire's will in which a stranger from a diner somehow ends up with an invitation." Lena glanced toward Marion, silently begging for clarity. But Marion was already walking toward the long mahogany table in the center of the room. Documents were arranged neatly atop it, sealed with ribbons and embossed stamps. A single leather chair waited for Lena at the far end, like a courtroom defendant's seat. "Please sit," Marion said. Lena did. Her hands felt small against the polished wood. Victor and Evelyn sat opposite her, their reflections gleaming in the glass wall behind. Outside, lightning flashed, painting the room in silver for a heartbeat. Marion opened the folder. The air thickened. "Per the legal request of the late Mr. Gabriel Stone," she began, "this will is to be read in the presence of his next of kin, Mr. Victor Hale and Mrs. Evelyn Hale, and one additional individual of his personal choosing, Miss Lena Moretti." The last name hung in the air like smoke. Victor gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course he'd make a spectacle out of it. Evelyn leaned toward her son. "Don't. Let her play her part. The old man always loved drama." Lena sat frozen as Marion continued. She listed foundations and trusts, properties and companies, each followed by numbers that barely sounded real. 8 million to the Stone Medical Fund, 10 million to the Pacific Research Initiative, several properties to longtime associates and charities. Lena's mind drifted as she tried to comprehend the scale of it all. The zeros blurred together. The rain outside seemed louder than Marion's voice. She thought of the man who had sat by the diner window, his coat frayed, his shoes scuffed. That man had never looked like someone who owned half the skyline. She felt dizzy, a mix of awe and grief. Then she heard her name. "And to Miss Lena Moretti," Marion read, pausing, "who, without knowledge of his identity, offered him simple kindness every morning, without expectation or motive." Lena's breath caught. Victor straightened in his seat, eyes sharp. "What did she say?" Marion's tone stayed even. "Mr. Stone has designated a specific provision regarding Miss Moretti. The details will be disclosed after family distributions are complete." Evelyn's voice dropped to ice. "He's giving her something? For pouring coffee?" Marion didn't answer. Victor laughed under his breath. "Unbelievable. The man loses his mind, and we're the ones stuck humoring it." Lena's pulse pounded. "I don't want anything," she said quickly. "If this is some mistake, I can—" Marion looked up, finally meeting her eyes. "It's not a mistake." The room fell silent except for the rain whispering against the glass. Victor leaned back in his chair, sneering. "Then I guess the circus is just beginning." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks, the city's lightning catching in the reflection of his watch. "I'll be in my office when this nonsense ends." "Sit down," Marion said calmly. "We're not done." The authority in her voice startled even him. Slowly, reluctantly, he obeyed. Lena watched in stunned quiet as Marion turned another page. The sound of paper was deafening. "Gabriel Stone," Marion read, "believed that empathy was rarer than genius, that those who offer warmth to strangers often hold more power than those who command nations." Victor scoffed. "Spare us the poetry." But Marion ignored him, her voice steady. He wished his final acts to reflect that belief, which means, Miss Moretti— She paused, eyes flicking to Lena. "That you are here for a reason none of us yet understand." Lena swallowed hard. "And what reason is that?" Marion closed the folder, her gaze unyielding. "To hear what he left you, and to decide what you'll do with it." Outside, thunder cracked, echoing through the tower. For a moment, it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. The waitress from the harbor was no longer just an observer to someone else's life. She was sitting at the table of giants, and the storm she had unknowingly stepped into had only just begun. The storm outside the tower had grown violent, wind sweeping against the windows like restless ghosts. Inside the glass boardroom, the only sound was Marion Hale's calm, deliberate voice. She turned another page of the will, her eyes scanning the text with quiet precision. "Next provision," she read, "to the individual known to me as the waitress from the Harbor Light Diner." Lena froze. Victor scoffed audibly. Evelyn's pearl earrings trembled as she turned sharply toward Marion, but Marion continued, unshaken. "Mr. Gabriel Stone writes, to the young woman who cut my toast into 4 perfect squares each morning, not because she was asked, but because she noticed, I leave a gift of gratitude." Her voice echoed through the room. $200,000 to be transferred to her immediately, for reasons that require no explanation. The words landed like a blow. Lena's stomach dropped. That can't be right," Victor let out a bitter laugh. Oh, it's right. It's perfectly insane, but it's right. Marion went on, steady and clear. Additionally, she said, to Miss Lena Moretti, I leave full ownership of the property and business known as the Harbor Light Diner, located on Pier 47, along with the investment portfolio attached to it, valued at approximately $4 million US. The heir vanished from the room. Lena blinked, the words sliding past her like rain on glass. $4 million? Her diner? Her voice cracked. No, that's not... I can't... That place belongs to Rosa. Marion closed the folder lightly. It now belongs to you. For a second, the world seemed to tilt. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the faint rumble of thunder. It all blurred together. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor herself. Across from her, Victor shot up from his chair, rage boiling over. This is absurd! You're seriously telling me my grandfather left millions to some waitress who brings him toast? Mr. Hale, Marion began. No! His voice rose, sharp and venomous. I won't sit here and let this farce continue. That girl is nothing. She's a charity case who probably smiled her way into his delusions. You think kindness makes someone worthy of inheriting an empire? Lena's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. Her hands shook under the table, knuckles white. Victor turned on her, his tone dripping contempt. Congratulations, sweetheart. You poured coffee and got yourself a fortune. Maybe you'll buy yourself a painting to hang over your fryer. Marion's expression hardened. That's enough. He ignored her. You must feel so proud, don't you? Tricking an old man into thinking you cared. Stop, Marion said again, her voice like cold steel. But Victor kept going, pacing, fury spilling unchecked. You think this will stand? I'll have my lawyers contest every word. He was senile, manipulated. That's what this is, manipulation. Finally, Marion rose from her seat. Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. Sit down, Mr. Hale. Victor froze mid-step. There was something in her tone, a quiet authority that cut sharper than any shout. This will was notarized, witnessed, and sealed under federal oversight, she said calmly. Gabriel Stone was of sound mind until his final day. He dictated these instructions personally. Every word was deliberate. She turned slightly toward Lena, whose eyes glistened with disbelief. He chose you, Miss Moretti, not because of what you could offer him, but because of what you already did. Victor slammed his hand on the table. You can't seriously mean to say she deserves this. Marion looked at him. Deserve has nothing to do with it. Gabriel Stone didn't leave his legacy to those who demanded it. He left it to those who never asked. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Lena swallowed hard. I don't understand, she whispered. I didn't do anything. Marion's voice softened, but only slightly. You were kind when no one else was. That was enough for him. Evelyn finally spoke, her tone icy but controlled. This is a humiliation. My father-in-law clearly lost his grip on reality. We will challenge this. You're welcome to try, Marion replied evenly, but you'll find his instructions airtight. Every transfer, every clause, every timestamp. Recorded, witnessed, and irrevocable. Victor muttered something under his breath, his face red with fury. Marion ignored him and turned back to Lena. There's more, she said. Mr. Stone also specified that you be given legal counsel, protection, and full financial guidance as you transition ownership of the diner and associated assets. Lena blinked. Protection? Marion paused, then closed the file. You'll understand soon enough. People react unpredictably when kindness is rewarded more than bloodline. Victor let out a short, bitter laugh. You make it sound like she's inheriting a war. Marion glanced at him. She might be. Outside, lightning flashed again, illuminating the rain-streaked windows. For a brief moment, everyone's reflection glimmered across the glass. Victor's clenched jaw, Evelyn's icy stillness, Marion's composed resolve, and Lena's pale face caught between awe and fear. The storm outside seemed to echo the one building in the room. Lena finally found her voice. If Mr. Stone really meant this, then I'll do my best. I don't know how any of this works, but Victor cut her off with a laugh. Your best? You'll be broke in a month. You think you can run a business? You'll burn through it faster than the ink dries." Marion's gaze was steady. "That's not your concern anymore, Mr. Hale." He rounded on her. "You can't shut me out." "I can," she said, "and I will." Evelyn stood, voice trembling slightly. "We'll appeal." Marion closed the will and slid it into her briefcase. "You're welcome to try, but Gabriel Stone anticipated that too." Victor's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Marion met his glare head on. "You'll find out when the rest of the estate is unsealed." With that, she turned toward Lena. "Miss Moretti, you should come with me. There's more you need to see." Lena hesitated, glancing between the furious heirs and the lawyer who just changed her life. "Where are we going?" "To start understanding the man you thought you knew." As Marion led her toward the door, Victor's voice cut through the air like a blade. "This isn't over." Marion didn't even turn. "It never is, Mr. Hale, not when greed's involved." The elevator doors closed behind them with a hiss. Inside, Lena's reflection trembled in the mirrored walls. Her pulse still raced, her thoughts spinning faster than the descent. $200,000, $4 million in assets, and a diner she'd once mopped floors in, now hers. She whispered to herself, "Why me?" Marion looked straight ahead. "Because Gabriel Stone saw something the rest of us forgot how to see." The elevator chimed softly. The doors slid open to the glow of the city below, a world Lena no longer recognized. And as she stepped out into the storm-soaked streets, she realized that what she'd inherited wasn't just a diner. It was a responsibility, a test, and possibly a target. The rain hadn't stopped since the reading of the will. It was the kind of endless drizzle that turned the world gray, soft, persistent, and merciless. By the time the black sedan dropped her off at her building, Lena felt as if the city itself was holding its breath. Her apartment smelled of damp paint and instant coffee. The radiator hissed but gave no heat. She closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. The envelope Marion had given her was still clutched in her hand. Heavy parchment, sealed with wax, her name written in a careful, old-fashioned script. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at it. Her fingers hesitated on the seal. When she finally broke it open, a brass key slid into her lap, small, ornate, and cool to the touch. Inside the envelope was a folded note, written in Gabriel Stone's steady, slanted handwriting. "For the woman who served coffee with a soul. Coffee is for the heart. This room is for the future. You'll know where it belongs when the time is right." She read the lines again and again, her vision blurring until the ink melted into tears. He'd thought about her. He'd planned this. On the floor beside her bed sat a stack of unopened bills, rent, electricity, her mother's care home. She reached for her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart. "Marigold Assisted Living. How can I help you?" Her voice shook. "This is Lena Moretti. I'm calling about my mother's account, Marie Moretti." A pause, then the calm voice of the administrator. "Yes, I'm familiar. We've been waiting for—" Lena cut in, barely breathing. "I'm paying everything, the full balance, and I want to prepay the next year." Another pause, this time disbelief. "Are you sure, Miss Moretti? That's a significant amount." "I'm sure," she said. "She deserves peace." When she hung up, her hand trembled so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Then it hit her, all at once, the months of fear, of choosing between medicine and meals, between art and survival. Now, in one storm-soaked night, that weight had lifted. She slid down to the floor, curling against the bed. The tears came quietly at first, then in heavy, shaking sobs. She cried for her mother, for Gabriel, for the strange, impossible kindness that had changed everything. Outside, the rain drummed on the window, but inside, the air felt clean for the first time in years. By morning, the clouds had thinned, though the world still smelled like rain. Lena stood before the mirror, pulling her hair into a loose bun. Her eyes were red, but alive. The brass key gleamed on her desk, catching the gray light. She didn't know what had opened yet, but somehow it felt like a promise. Before stepping out, she tucked the letter inside her coat pocket and headed for the Harbor Light Diner. The streets were slick, the gutters overflowing. The smell of salt and diesel from the harbor, mixed with frying oil drifting from the kitchen vents as she neared the corner. Through the diner's fogged windows, she saw the same faces as always. Theo at the counter, Rosa behind the register, Brenda balancing a tray, customers hunched over coffee like nothing had changed. Only everything had. When she pushed the door open, the bell chimed softly, the same metallic note Gabriel once followed every morning. But now, everyone turned. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Theo blinked. "You're back." Lena smiled nervously. "Yeah." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron, frowning. "You didn't come yesterday. I figured you were taking time." "I was," Lena said. Her voice trembled, but she steadied it. "There's something I need to tell you." The hum of the diner seemed to fade. Even the coffee machine quieted, as if listening. Rosa crossed her arms. "Is this about the lawyer who came?" Lena nodded. "You know I serve Mr. Stone every morning. He left something for me." Brenda from across the counter muttered under her breath. "What, a tip?" Theo shot her a warning look, but Lena didn't flinch. "He left me this diner," she said quietly. It took a second for the words to land. Then Rosa's eyes widened. "You're joking." "I wish I were." Lena took a folded document from her bag, Marion's copy of the deed, and placed it on the counter. "He bought it 6 months ago, under a company name. And now, it's mine." The room went silent. Theo let out a low whistle. Brenda's tray tilted in her hand. Rosa took the paper, her expression a mix of disbelief and something deeper, hurt. "I sold this place to a developer," she whispered. "I thought they were going to tear it down. They offered me too much to say no." "They didn't," Lena said softly. "Gabriel did." Rosa sank onto a stool. "All this time, I was still working for him." Theo looked from one woman to the other. "So, does that mean—" Lena turned to face them all. "It means I'm your boss now." The words sounded strange, even to her. She saw the flicker of discomfort in their eyes, the sudden wall between her and them. Brenda was the first to speak. "Well, isn't that sweet? From waitress to queen in one rainy night." Theo hissed, "Brenda—" But Lena raised a hand. "It's okay." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but firm. "No one's getting fired. Not Rosa, not anyone. This place works because of you. I'm not here to change that. I just want to make it better." Theo leaned on the counter, half smiling. "Better how?" "For starters," she said, glancing toward the kitchen, "we're fixing the air conditioner, and the coffee machine, and the knives that haven't been sharp since I started here." Rosa gave a startled laugh, wiping her eyes. "You sound like him." Lena smiled faintly. "Maybe he taught me something," Brenda muttered. "Money changes people fast." Lena looked at her, steady. "Maybe, but kindness doesn't have to." For a long moment, no one spoke. Rain whispered against the windows. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee filled the silence. Finally, Rosa stood and put a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Then, let's see what you can do, boss." Lena smiled through the tears that threatened again. "It's still our diner. I'm just holding it for him." Theo raised his mug. "To the new harbor light." The others murmured in agreement. Even Brenda gave a reluctant nod. Outside, the rain began to fade into mist, the gray sky lightening towards silver. Lena walked to the window, the same one Gabriel used to sit by. The seat was empty, but his reflection seemed to linger there, half seen in the glass. She whispered, almost to herself, "Coffee for the heart. A room for the future." The brass key glinted in her palm. Somewhere, she knew, that key would lead her to the next part of Gabriel's plan. But for now, she had a diner to protect, people to reassure, and a promise to keep alive. Not through wealth, but through warmth. The next morning, the rain had given way to a weak sun. It crept through the harbor fog like a secret that didn't know whether to reveal itself or hide again. Lena stood at the curb, holding the small brass key between her fingers. The metal was warm from her skin, its ornate edges catching the light. Marion's voice echoed in her memory. "There's something he wanted you to see, his private residence." Now, a black sedan idled in front of her. The driver, one of Marion's silent security men, opened the door and said only, "Penthouse on 5th. She hesitated. "That's his home?" "Yes, Miss Moretti. No one's entered in over a decade." The words followed her into the car like ghosts. The ride through downtown was quiet. Seattle looked different in daylight, steel and glass glinting coldly, the harbor far behind her like another lifetime. By the time they reached the penthouse, her heart was drumming fast enough to drown out her thoughts. The building itself looked like it belonged to another era. Limestone pillars, brass fixtures, a doorman in a Navy uniform who seemed carved out of tradition. He gave a short nod as they passed. Mr. Stone's guests. In the elevator, the hum of machinery filled the silence. The numbers climbed steadily until there were none left to climb. The doors opened into stillness. Marian was waiting. Her dark coat seemed to absorb the light around her. "Good," she said softly. "You came." Lena stepped out. "You said this was his private space?" Marian nodded. "He never allowed anyone inside, not even family. When he was working here, he disconnected from the world. It was sacred to him." "Why me?" "Because he left instructions that, if you ever asked what he truly did with his time, I was to bring you here." The penthouse was vast and almost unnervingly immaculate. Light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, falling on polished floors and shelves lined with rare books. But what caught Lena's breath wasn't the luxury. It was the art. Paintings hung on every wall, landscapes, portraits, abstracts. A violin rested on a velvet-lined stand beside the grand piano. Sheet music lay open on the keys, notes fading into silence. Lena stepped closer. "He played?" Marian smiled faintly. "Once, a long time ago." The air smelled faintly of cedar and something older, like memories sealed too long. They moved through the penthouse until they reached a hallway lined with closed doors. At the end stood one that was different. Thick oak, a brass lock gleaming beneath the light. Marian stopped there. "This is it." She handed Lena the small key. Her fingers shook. "You're not coming in?" He shook her head. "No, he left that choice for you." Lena hesitated, then slid the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. The door opened on a whisper of air, dust and time mingling together. Inside, the light was dim but golden, filtered through high. At windows. The room was nothing like the rest of the apartment. It was lived in, cluttered, human. Stacks of papers covered the large wooden desk. The smell of old books and pipe tobacco lingered in the air. But what froze her in place was the wall. Every inch of it was covered, floor to ceiling, with a web of documents, photographs, and strings. Some strings connected corporate reports and stock charts. Others tied newspaper clippings to handwritten notes. It looked like the mind of a man who had spent his life building an empire, and mapping every consequence. Lena stepped closer. Her shoes creaked on the floorboards. The first photos were of city skylines, then corporate leaders, headlines about mergers and lawsuits. Then her eyes caught something different. A series of old black and white photographs filled one section of the wall. In each, the same woman appeared, young, graceful, holding a violin. In one photo, she played under warm lights, a small audience blurred behind her. In another, she stood in a sunlit field, hair loose, laughing at someone out of frame. Pinned beneath the final picture was a note in Gabriel's handwriting. Evelyn Stone, 1953-1990. The music never stopped, it only changed keys. Lena's chest tightened, his wife. She traced the woman's face with her eyes, the soft expression, the warmth in her smile, and for a moment she could almost hear the faint echo of a violin. Marian's voice came softly from the doorway. She was a composer, brilliant. When she died, something in him broke. He stopped performing, stopped painting, stopped living for a while. Lena swallowed. He hid it well. He didn't hide, Marian said quietly. He listened, to the world, to people, waiting for something or someone to remind him of what he'd lost. Lena turned back to the wall. Her gaze drifted lower, across a series of letters Gabriel had written to himself. Half reflections, half instructions. Empathy is not weakness, it is the rarest intelligence. Power corrupts those who never tasted hunger. If I cannot find music again, I'll find someone who still hears it. And then, in the center of it all, she saw something that made her heart stop. A photograph of herself. She was laughing, standing outside the diner in her apron, holding a Togo cup, sunlight glinting off the window behind her. Pinned beneath it was a note written in shaky script. "She has her song." Lena pressed a hand to her mouth. "Oh my God!" Marion stepped forward now, her voice low. "He took that picture himself. One morning after you refilled his cup and didn't charge him. He came here that afternoon and added it to the wall." "But why?" Lena whispered. Marion studied her for a long moment. "He once told me that music isn't sound. It's empathy in motion. You reminded him of that. He said you carried the same melody his wife once did." Lena's eyes blurred again, the tears coming quietly. "I didn't even know him." "You knew enough." Silence filled the room again, heavy, reverent. She walked slowly to the desk. On top lay another violin, smaller, dust gathering along its curve. Next to it, a folded envelope with her name written neatly across the front. She didn't open it, not yet. She just let her fingers rest on the paper, as if touching it might somehow bridge the years between them. Through the tall windows, the setting sun painted the city in amber light. Every photograph on the wall seemed to glow. The woman with the violin, the old concert hall, Gabriel's younger self, and finally Lena's own smile, the newest note in a symphony decades unfinished. She whispered to the empty room, "You found your music again, didn't you?" The silence answered in kind, soft and endless. And for the first time since his death, Lena didn't feel like the diner girl who'd been chosen by accident. She felt like part of a melody too, one that had begun long before her, and somehow was still playing through her hands. The city below was fading into dusk when Lena finally opened the envelope. The paper inside was thick, cream-colored, embossed with Gabriel Stone's seal, the same symbol she'd seen on the building that bore his name. She unfolded the contents slowly, expecting another letter, maybe another riddle. Instead, a single certificate slipped free and fluttered onto the desk. Kestrel Dynamics, shareholder certificate, issued to Miss Lena Moretti. Quantity, 1 common share. Lena blinked, confused. 1 share? What does that even mean? Marion stepped closer, her heels soundless against the polished floor. "It means you have a seat in the shareholders' assembly," she said. "A right to attend, to speak, and to be heard." Lena gave a nervous laugh. "I have 1 share in a company worth billions. What could I possibly say that matters?" Marion looked toward the wall of photographs, the one covered in Gabriel's handwriting and lines connecting people and power like constellations. Gabriel believed the smallest voices often carry the weight of truth when everyone else is shouting. Lena touched the edge of the paper, the embossed logo cold under her fingertips. "So this was part of his plan?" Marion nodded. "The last part, he called it his unfinished legacy." The words lingered like smoke. Lena frowned. "Why would he leave me this? I don't belong in that world." Marion turned toward the massive window overlooking the city. The sky outside was bruised gray, streaked with fading light. "He didn't leave it because you belonged there," she said. "He left it because you didn't." Lena stared at her reflection in the glass, small, out of place, the harbor girl staring back at her in a world built on glass and greed. "I'm not ready for this," she whispered. "No one ever is," Marion said softly. "But readiness isn't what he saw in you." Lena turned to her, her voice barely audible. "Then what did he see?" Marion met her eyes. Someone who still remembers what decency looks like. Silence hung between them. Outside, the rain began again, pattering softly against the window, tracing crooked paths down the glass. Marion moved toward the desk, resting a hand on the old violin case that still sat there. Gabriel built Kestrel Dynamics to create things that helped people, not to make empires, but to make life better. Over time, that vision eroded. Profit became God. Innovation became greed. He wanted to save what was left of the soul of his company. She turned back to Lena. "And he believed you could help him do it." Lena laughed bitterly. "Me? I serve pancakes and draw faces on napkins." Marion smiled faintly. "That's precisely why he chose you." Lena's confusion deepened. Marion walked to the window again, gazing out over the rain-washed skyline. "Gabriel once told me, when you've spent your life among wolves, you forget what kindness sounds like. The day I heard it again, it came from the mouth of a waitress." Lena swallowed, feeling the weight of those words settle into her chest. Marion's voice softened. Victor Hale is preparing to call an emergency shareholder meeting in 2 weeks. He wants to remove Kestrel's acting CEO, Mr. Fenn, the man Gabriel trusted to carry his principles forward. Victor's plan is simple: seize the company, liquidate its assets, and strip it of everything that isn't profitable. Lena stared at her. You mean destroy everything his grandfather built? Yes, Marion said, and he's already gathered allies on the board. Men who owe him favors, investors who only see numbers, not people. Lena shook her head slowly. I can't stop that. I don't even understand how that world works. Marion's eyes softened with a quiet, almost maternal patience. You'll learn. Gabriel left notes, documents, and a network of people who still believe in him. They'll listen if you speak. I'm not a speaker, Lena said. I'm not anything like him. Marion took a step closer. Do you think Gabriel Stone started out as a king? He began as a mechanic's son, cleaning machine oil off factory floors. He didn't speak the language of power until he had to. What made him great wasn't his wealth. It was his conviction. Lena looked back at the wall, at the photo of herself smiling outside the diner. She has her song. Her throat tightened. He saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Marion nodded slowly. And that's why he trusted you with this. She picked up the certificate, holding it out. This one share may seem small, but it's enough to enter that room. Enough to remind them that not everything can be bought. Lena hesitated before taking it. And what do I do when I'm in that room? Speak, Marion said simply. About what you saw in him, about what he valued. And if they laugh? Marion smiled faintly. Then you'll know you're in the right place. They both turned to the window again. The rain was heavier now, streaking down the glass like tears. The city lights shimmered through it, fragile, beautiful, untouchable. For a long while, neither spoke. Finally, Lena said quietly, He wanted me to fight for the company's soul. Yes, Marion said, and to protect it from the people who believe it doesn't have one. Lena glanced at her reflection. 2 women framed against a gray skyline, one forged by power, the other by survival. She exhaled slowly. I don't even know where to start. Marion's eyes softened. You start the same way you did with him. How's that? With kindness. The answer lingered in the air, simple yet unshakable. Lena looked down at the certificate once more. The gold letters shimmered faintly under the dim light. For the first time, it didn't feel like paper. It felt like a burden and a promise. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her bag. Then she turned back toward the door. When's the meeting? 2 weeks, Marion said. But that's not much time. If you want to stand in that room, you'll need to understand what he built and what Victor plans to destroy. Lena's voice steadied. Then teach me. Marion regarded her for a long moment. Her reflection ghosted against the skyline. You really mean it? Yes. Marion's expression softened into something almost like admiration. Then, you'd better clear your schedule. We have a great deal of work to do. As they left the penthouse, the last light of day faded behind them, swallowed by the gray clouds rolling in from the harbor. The elevator descended in silence, its mirrored walls reflecting two, the women who could not have come from more different worlds, and yet, for the first time, shared the same purpose. Outside, the wind whipped through the city, scattering leaves and rain. The world was preparing for another storm. But this one wouldn't be born from weather. It would be born from truth. The following days blurred into a rhythm Lena had never known before, equal parts exhaustion and awakening. Every morning, she ran the diner as usual, serving customers, fixing the broken espresso machine, laughing with Theo. But every night, when the last light from the harbor dimmed, she returned to Gabriel Stone's penthouse, her new classroom above the clouds. Marion Hale became her teacher. No textbooks, no grades. Only lessons written in the language of power. They met in Gabriel's study, the one lined with old books and that wall of tangled maps and photographs. The air smelled of paper and faint tobacco, and sometimes, when the city wind rattled the windows, Lena imagined he was still there, listening. Marion started with the basics. Corporations, she said, sliding open a binder, are stories. Whoever controls the narrative controls the company. She pointed to a chart. Here, See this? These are the shareholders. Their votes decide everything. Lena frowned. And I only have one share. Yes, Marion said, but Gabriel left something else behind. Trust. It's rarer than equity. You'll need both. Every night, Lena filled page after page with notes, terms she barely understood at first. Proxy rights, dividends, minority representation. Her handwriting was cramped, her coffee cold, but each lesson made her see something new. The machinery behind every act of greed, and the way kindness, if placed precisely, could jam the gears. One evening, as Marion gathered her papers, Lena looked up from her notes. Was he like you, Gabriel? Marion smiled faintly. No, he was like you. I was only the lawyer. He was the conscience. That night, Lena stayed long after Marion left. The rain outside beat against the glass, and the city shimmered below, an ocean of light. She pinned new sketches to the corkboard, diagrams, arrows, quotes Gabriel had written. But instead of financial webs, she drew something different, a new kind of map, a map of kindness. At the center, she wrote one line: "The only currency that never loses value is decency." The next morning at the diner, Rosa blinked in disbelief as Lena unpacked a box of new brushes and canvases. "What's all this?" "An idea," Lena said. "We're turning that corner wall into an art space. Anyone who wants to draw, paint, or just breathe can." Theo grinned. "You're serious?" "Completely. We'll hang the paintings every month. Free coffee for artists." Brenda scoffed from behind the counter. "You think people want to draw while eating hash browns?" Lena smiled. "You'd be surprised what people want when someone gives them permission." By noon, the first brush strokes appeared on the wall. Children painting waves, an elderly couple sketching gulls, a longshoreman drawing his boat from memory. The diner, once just a stop for coffee and complaints, began to hum with something else. Hope. Lena didn't stop there. She gave everyone a raise, small but enough to matter. She ordered new uniforms, repaired the air conditioning, even replaced the warped floor tiles near the kitchen. Theo joked, "Feels weird being paid on time. You sure this is legal?" Rosa smiled through tears she tried to hide. "He'd be proud of you, you know." Lena looked toward the window, the same one Gabriel used to sit by, and whispered, "I hope so." But good things, she was learning, never go unnoticed. By the end of the week, people were talking. First, it was local chatter. That diner by the harbor, new owner, young, sweet girl. Then the headlines grew sharper. Waitress inherits millions from late CEO. And finally, the gossip turned cruel. Lena saw the first article one morning, left on a customer's table. Coffee girl or con artist, mystery heiress linked to billionaire's estate. Her stomach sank. Rosa tore the paper in half. Garbage. Don't read it. But the whispers had already begun. Customers stared longer now, their curiosity edged with judgment. Even Brenda couldn't resist muttering, "Guess fame isn't free after all." Lena pretended not to hear. But that night, when she returned to the penthouse, Marion was already waiting, face tight, a stack of printed headlines in hand. "Victor," she said simply. Lena didn't need to ask. Of course it was him. Marion laid the papers out on the desk. "He's leaking stories, trying to discredit you before the shareholder meeting. Why? Because fear works faster than truth. If he paints you as a fraud, your voice in that room will carry no weight." Lena sank into the chair, exhaustion creeping in. "So, what do I do?" Marion studied her. "You keep building. Let your actions speak louder than his headlines." Lena nodded slowly, her eyes drifting toward Gabriel's corkboard, the chaotic web of his empire. Then to her own smaller board beside it, filled with sketches, staff rosters, handwritten notes, and one word circled in red ink: integrity. She took a pen and added a new note under it. "They can attack the story, but not the truth." The following days she doubled down. The diner became a haven, not polished or luxurious, but alive. She started hosting harbor nights, open evenings for local artists and musicians, free entry, free coffee for anyone who performed. Theo joked it was chaos, but Rosa said it was healing. Even Brenda softened a little, humming along to a guitarist one evening as she wiped tables. The neighborhood changed too. Families returned, tourists lingered, the tip jar overflowed. And in the midst of it all, Lena began to feel something she hadn't in years. Purpose. Not borrowed from Gabriel's wealth, but earned through her own choices. Still, every time she checked her phone, new headlines flashed across the screen. Heiress without merit. From diner girl to deceiver. Victor Hale's face appeared in every article, smiling, confident, polished. He gave interviews about family betrayal and protecting the legacy. He was framing her story before she could even tell it. One night, as rain whipped against the windows of the penthouse, Lena stood before her wall again. The map of kindness. She'd added new strings connecting her diner to small notes Gabriel had written. Human connection is the only lasting structure. Beside it, she pinned a printout of Victor's latest headline and drew a red line straight through it. Her voice was quiet but certain. You can control the media, Victor, but I control the memory. She picked up a marker and wrote across the center of the board, "Empathy is strategy." Her reflection in the window caught the light of the desk lamp. Behind her, the wall of Gabriel's tangled empire glowed faintly, its web of lines mirrored by her own, a new design, not of wealth or control, but of restoration. As the rain eased outside, Lena took one final note and pinned it at the top of her board. Kindness is the only revolution that can't be bought. She stepped back, studying it, her expression tired but fierce. The storm of rumors outside was growing louder, but she finally understood. The only way to survive the world Gabriel left her was not to fight like them, but to teach them what he had once taught her, to turn compassion into strategy, and humility into power. The day of the meeting arrived like a storm without thunder, gray, heavy, and expectant. From the street below, Kestrel Tower loomed over the skyline, its mirrored walls slicing through the Seattle clouds. Lena stood at the entrance, her reflection merging with the cold glass. She could barely recognize herself in the navy suit Marianne had insisted she wear. She smoothed the lapels with trembling fingers. "I don't belong here," she whispered. Beside her, Marianne gave a small, measured smile. "You do now, and remember, Gabriel built this tower on truth, not fear. Let's see if it still remembers him." They stepped through the revolving doors. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and chrome, bustling with men in dark suits, women in sharp heels, cameras flashing like restless lightning. Everyone moved with the assurance of people born into power, except her. When they entered the boardroom, conversations froze mid-sentence. At the far end of the long glass table stood Victor Hale, immaculate in a tailored charcoal suit, his smile polished and poisonous. "Well," he said loudly, "if it isn't the waitress." A few people chuckled, others shifted uncomfortably. Lena didn't flinch. She met his eyes and said calmly, "Good morning, Mr. Hale." He tilted his head, mock surprise. "Miss Moretti, I didn't expect you'd actually come. Must be confusing for you. No coffee pots here." Marian stepped forward. "She's here as a shareholder, Victor, as per Gabriel Stone's will." Victor's smile hardened. "Of course, one share, a lovely gesture from a sentimental old man." He turned to the crowd, raising his voice. "But this meeting is about vision, about progress, not nostalgia." The meeting began. Victor dominated the floor with his performance, equal parts arrogance and charisma. He spoke of innovation, of cutting inefficiency, of transforming Kestrel dynamics into a global titan. He moved like a preacher before his congregation, his words sleek and hollow. Behind him, screens flashed charts, profits, graphs, all dressed in light but devoid of soul. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said grandly, "my grandfather was a visionary, but the world has changed. Sentimentality doesn't build empires, strategy does. We must be bold, we must be ruthless, we must lead without fear." Applause scattered across the room like polite rain. Marian leaned toward Lena. "When he finishes, you'll have the right to speak. Remember, truth, not anger." Lena nodded, her pulse pounding in her throat. Victor's voice filled the room again. "That is why I propose a vote of no confidence in our current CEO, Mr. Fenn, and nominate myself as chairman. Kestrel needs fresh blood, family blood." He smiled wide, the predator's grin of someone who already believed he'd won. "Any objections?" he asked smoothly. Marian rose. "One." Victor's smile faltered. "Oh?" She stepped aside, revealing Lena. Miss Moretti, as shareholder, would like to address the assembly. A ripple of laughter ran through the room. A woman whispered, "She's kidding." A man muttered, "This is absurd." Victor folded his arms. "Fine, by all means. Let's hear the barista's view on corporate leadership." Lena took a deep breath. Her hands shook as she approached the podium. The microphone gleamed cold beneath the lights. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but steady. "My name is Lena Moretti. For 3 years, I served coffee at the Harbor Light Diner by the pier. Every morning at 7:15, an old man came in. Always the same order, black coffee, wheat toast. He never spoke. His hands trembled when he tried to cut his bread, so one morning I cut it for him. He nodded once. That became our ritual. For a long time, I thought he was just lonely. I never imagined he was Gabriel Stone. The room grew still. Even Victor's smirk faltered. Lena continued, her voice gaining strength. He didn't tell me who he was, but he listened. To people, to silence, to kindness. And when he died, he left me 1 share of this company, the company he built, to remind everyone in this room that a business without humanity isn't worth saving. A low murmur moved through the audience. Cameras turned toward her. Victor forced a laugh. Beautiful story, heartwarming really, but what does breakfast sentimentality have to do with global finance? Marion's calm voice cut through the room. "Show them, Lena." Lena placed a folder on the table before the chairman. "These are copies of internal documents from Kestrel's investment division. They were found in Gabriel's private study." The room tensed. Lena's tone hardened. "They detail fraudulent transfers from Kestrel's research fund to shell companies under Victor Hale's name. There are records of staff terminations tied to whistleblowing, and personal debts, gambling debts, settled using company money." Gasps broke the silence. Victor slammed his hand on the table. "Lies! Fabrications by a confused girl and a bitter lawyer." Lena didn't look away. Gabriel knew Victor. He documented everything. He even wrote it in his own hand. He mistakes greed for ambition. The words hit like a hammer. Victor's face reddened. "You think anyone here will take your word over mine? You think you can lecture me about legacy?" Lena drew in a breath. "I don't need to lecture you. I just need to tell the truth." She stepped closer to the microphone, her voice rising, steady now. Gabriel Stone didn't build Kestrel to dominate the world. He built it to improve it. He believed that technology could serve humanity, not enslave it. That leadership meant stewardship, not ownership. She paused, meeting the eyes of the silent room. And he believed that kindness builds empires that greed can't. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. One of the senior board members, white-haired, weary-eyed, stood, applauding softly. Then another joined, and another. The applause spread, hesitant at first, then gathering momentum until it filled the room like a rising tide. Victor's face was stone. He tried to speak, but his words drowned under the sound. Lena waited for the room to quiet, then spoke again. "Mr. Hale says he wants a new vision for Kestrel. So do I." She opened another folder and laid out. "A simple document? This is a proposal to create the Stone Legacy Foundation, a program that will dedicate 10% of Kestrel's annual profits to fund art education, community projects, and scholarships for young innovators who can't afford their dreams." Whispers turned to astonishment. Lena continued. "Because no company can claim progress if it forgets the people. Progress is supposed to help." The chairman leaned forward. "And who would oversee this foundation?" Lena hesitated, then said quietly, "I will, if you'll let me. Not as an executive, as a reminder. That this company was built by hands that remembered what it meant to tremble." Silence again, heavy, electrified. Victor tried to recover, his voice breaking through. This is emotional manipulation. You can't run a corporation on pity." But no one was listening. The board members were conferring in low tones. The tide had shifted. Within minutes, the motion for Victor's nomination collapsed under unanimous rejection. The vote for the Stone Legacy Foundation passed with overwhelming support. Lena's knees nearly buckled as the chairman turned to her. "Miss Moretti, congratulations." Victor stared at her, eyes burning with fury and disbelief, but he said nothing. As the applause returned, louder this time, Lena closed her eyes and breathed. She thought of Gabriel, of the trembling hands, of the smell of coffee and toast, of the quiet dignity in his silence. He had given her the smallest piece of his empire, a single share, and it had been enough to change everything. The applause had sounded like thunder at first, wild, cathartic, unstoppable. But when it finally faded, what remained was silence, a silence so complete that it seemed to hold the whole city within it. Lena stood at the center of the glass-walled boardroom, the echo of her own heartbeat still loud in her ears. She felt weightless, disoriented, as if the floor beneath her were no longer solid. For a long, suspended moment, no one spoke. Then, from the far end of the table, a chair creaked. A gray-haired man rose, one of the oldest directors, his back straight despite his age. His voice broke the stillness. Gabriel would have liked that speech, he said quietly. He began to clap again, slowly, deliberately. One by one, others followed. The sound grew, not the perfunctory applause of protocol, but something warmer, older. It felt like respect, being born in real time. Victor Hale sat frozen, his jaw tight, the applause ricocheting around him like a verdict. His polished smile was gone now, replaced by the raw, unfamiliar shape of disbelief. For the first time in his carefully constructed life, he had no words. Marion stood behind Lena, watching, her expression unreadable, until a small, knowing smile ghosted across her face. The chairman cleared his throat. The motion for Mr. Hale's appointment as chairman is withdrawn. The board will retain the current leadership. He turned toward Lena. And the proposal for the Stone Legacy Foundation passed by full consensus. A murmur spread through the room, relief, approval, even quiet joy. Lena blinked, her throat tightening. You mean it's official? The chairman nodded. Effective immediately. You've done something rare here, Miss Moretti. You reminded us why this company exists in the first place. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the microphone again. Her voice was soft now, stripped of formality. Thank you. But this isn't about me. Gabriel Stone believed the heart of innovation was empathy. All I did was remind you of his voice. She paused, scanning the faces before her. Men and women who had once seen only numbers, now quietly moved by something they couldn't quantify. I don't want a position, she said simply. I don't want a title. I only want to keep the promise I made to him. Marion's eyebrows lifted. Which is? Lena smiled faintly. To make sure kindness never becomes an endangered species. A few people laughed softly, though some wiped their eyes. The chairman nodded. Then you'll have full authority to oversee the foundation's creation. You'll report directly to the board. Victor's voice finally cracked through the air, sharp and brittle. This is insane! You're giving her power based on a sob story and sentiment. You'll regret it. Marion turned to him, calm and lethal. No, Victor. What you're seeing is a company remembering its soul, something you were never able to find. Victor stood abruptly, the chair screeching behind him. This isn't over, he hissed, then stormed out of the room. The heavy door slammed shut, a punctuation mark on the end of an era. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was peaceful. The CEO, Mr. Fenn, approached Lena with a gentle smile. He extended his hand. You saved my job, and perhaps the company's conscience. Thank you. Lena shook his hand. It wasn't about saving jobs. It was about saving what he built. Marion stepped closer. He'd be proud of you, Lena. You didn't just win. You changed the rules. Lena turned to her, brow furrowed. Change them? Marion's voice softened. You turned compassion into policy. Do you realize how rare that is in a room like this? Lena looked out the window. The storm that had gathered all morning was beginning to clear, sunlight breaking through thin clouds. The city glittered faintly, wet, reflective, reborn. I'm not sure I changed anything, she said quietly. I just reminded them that there's more to power than control. Marion smiled. That's exactly what change looks like. Later that afternoon, the corridors of Kestrel Tower felt different. Where whispers of scandal once lingered, now came murmurs of something else. Admiration, even hope. Executives nodded politely as Lena passed, unsure how to greet her. Some smiled awkwardly, others with genuine gratitude. In the lobby, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, questions flying like darts. Miss Moretti, did you expect to win? Are you joining the board? What's next for the Stone Legacy Foundation? Lena stopped just long enough to answer one. We start small, she said. Art programs, scholarships, community workshops. Because big change begins with small kindnesses. Her words went viral within hours. Weeks later, a modest ceremony took place on the 20th floor. A quiet, almost sacred event. The Stone Legacy Foundation plaque gleamed on the wall, beneath a framed photograph of Gabriel Stone. In the picture, he was younger, smiling, holding a violin. Lena placed a small vase of wildflowers beneath it. You always said coffee was for the heart, she whispered. Maybe music will be too. The foundation's first initiative launched that very day, a fund for underprivileged students in art and music, giving them the tools and spaces to create. Rosa, Theo, and even Brenda were there from the diner, dressed awkwardly in business clothes, beaming with pride. Theo leaned toward her and whispered, I still can't believe you pulled this off. Lena grinned, neither can I. Brenda smirked. Guess I should have been nicer to you, huh? Too late, Lena teased. You're still getting that raise, though. They laughed, and for a fleeting moment, the sterile corporate office felt alive again, like a diner full of noise, warmth, and humanity. Marion watched from a few steps away, arms crossed, a rare softness in her expression. You know, she said as Lena approached, when I first met you, I thought Gabriel had finally lost his mind. Lena smiled. And now? Now I think he might have been the only one still sane. They both laughed, the sound carrying through the glass hallways like sunlight. As the day ended, Lena stood alone in the boardroom where it had all begun. The chairs were empty now. The city outside was bathed in gold. She walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. Her reflection stared back, still the same waitress, still the same heart, only steadier now. She whispered to the fading skyline, We did it, Gabriel. Behind her, Marion's voice drifted from the doorway. You know, you didn't just win a vote today. You built something that might actually outlive all of us. Lena turned, smiling softly. Maybe, or maybe I just served another cup of coffee. Marion chuckled. If so, it was the most expensive cup in history. They laughed quietly together as the light dimmed, shadows stretching long across the glass table. Outside, the last streaks of daylight reflected off the city's towers, shimmering like liquid silver. A city no longer just of power, but of promise. The morning light over the harbor came softly now, blue and gold and endlessly forgiving. It spilled through the wide windows of the Harbor Light Diner, catching on clean glass, polished counters, and the faint gleam of chrome. A year had passed since the day Lena Moretti stood trembling in a glass tower and spoke for a man the world had nearly forgotten. Now, that world felt smaller, quieter, more human. The diner had changed, but only just enough. The peeling paint was gone, replaced with warm cream walls. The old coffee machine hummed like new. A fresh mural of the harbor stretched across one side of the room, sunlight shimmering off the painted waves. But in the far corner, booth number 4, everything remained exactly the same. The faded mustard vinyl, the cracked edge of the table, even the old sugar jar. Above it hung a small brass plaque that read, Gabriel's Window, where every sunrise begins with kindness. Lena wiped the counter with a slow, contented rhythm. The bell over the door jingled softly as the first regulars wandered in, shaking off the chill. Morning, boss, Theo called, tying his new chef's apron. Morning, chef, she teased. He laughed, flipping his spatula like it was a magic trick. Still feels strange when you say that? Rosa appeared behind him, wearing a soft gray sweater instead of her old uniform. Her hair was whiter now, but her eyes sparkled the same. You two still arguing before 8 a.m., she said, her voice rich and amused. Business as usual. Lena smiled. Wouldn't feel like home otherwise. Rosa set down a basket of fresh scones. You remember when we couldn't afford butter? Theo grinned. Now we import it. They laughed together, the sound mingling with the hiss of the espresso machine and the faint hum of the radio. On one wall, several paintings hung neatly in a row, soft watercolor pieces of seagulls, sunsets, and steaming cups of coffee. Each bore a small signature, Marie Moretti. Lena's mother sat by the window now, her hands flecked with color, working on another canvas. Her hair had thinned, but her cheeks glowed with life. "How's it coming, Mom?" Lena asked, setting a cup of chamomile tea beside her. Marie smiled, her eyes gentle. "It's almost there. The light keeps changing. It's tricky to catch it just right." Lena leaned closer to look. It was a painting of the diner itself, morning light streaming through the glass, a lone figure pouring coffee near the window. "It's beautiful," Lena whispered. Marie looked up at her daughter. "He'd be proud of you, you know." Lena hesitated, her eyes drifting toward booth 4. "I hope so." By mid-morning, the diner was alive with laughter, the smell of cinnamon and sea air twining through the room. On the corner wall, the Art for Everyone board overflowed with sketches, some from children, some from strangers passing through, some from people who said they hadn't, drawn since they were young. A sign above it read, "Take a seat, draw something real." It had become their tradition. Every month, Lena replaced the oldest drawings with new ones, framing a few of her favorites near the counter. One of those frames held a simple pencil sketch of an old man in a tweed coat, hands trembling as he lifted a coffee cup. She never told anyone who drew it. When a young couple stopped near the booth, reading the plaque, the man asked, "Who was Gabriel?" Lena smiled. "A regular, never missed a morning." The woman grinned. "Must have been special." "He was," Lena said softly. "He still is." Later, when the rush had passed, Lena stepped outside for air. The sky was pale blue, the sea calm. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp and bright. She wrapped her arms around herself, breathing in the salt and the quiet. Behind her, the diner glowed warm through the windows. Theo at the grill, Rosa fussing with the flower vases, her mother painting by the light. The world Gabriel had left her wasn't made of skyscrapers or stock certificates. It was this, a heartbeat made of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because they cared. She thought of his study, that wall of maps and notes, the photograph of his wife with her violin, and of the small line he'd written beside her own picture, "She has her song." Maybe that was what this place had always been, a song, a quiet, steady melody of kindness, carried by those who refused to let the world grow too cold. She walked back inside, refilling cups, greeting new faces, trading stories with travelers. Every time she passed booth 4, her hand brushed the edge of the table, as if in silent conversation with the man who had once sat there. When she poured another cup of black coffee, the steam curled upward, soft and ghost-like, catching the sunlight. For a second, she could almost see him, smiling faintly, hat resting beside his cup, eyes full of something like peace. She blinked, and he was gone. But the warmth remained. As noon approached, a gust of wind swept through when the door opened. A young man stepped in, soaked from the drizzle outside. He hesitated by the door, scanning the tables. "First time here?" Lena asked. "Yeah," he said. "Heard this place does more than serve food." She smiled. "We try." He slid into a seat. "Then I'll have what everyone keeps talking about." "And what's that?" He thought for a moment. "The kind of coffee that changes your day." Lena chuckled softly, reaching for the pot. "Coming right up." She poured carefully, the sound of it warm and familiar. The young man watched her. "You look like you've been doing this forever." "Maybe I have," she said, "but it never feels old." He smiled. "What's the secret?" She paused, meeting his eyes. "Don't rush the pour, and never forget who's holding the cup." The morning wore on, sunlight spilling brighter across the diner's floor. Theo flipped pancakes to the rhythm of the radio. Rosa hummed as she wiped the counter. Marie finished her painting, the final stroke landing like a whisper. Above the door hung a small wooden sign, carved by one of the local artists. "Kindness lives here." Lena glanced up at it often, not out of pride, but gratitude. As the last customers of the morning left, she stood by the window, gazing at the sea beyond. Seagulls soared through the air, the same as they had a year ago, the same as they always would. Her reflection glimmered faintly in the glass, older now, steadier, content. And in that reflection, she saw two worlds joined, the diner's warmth behind her and the open sky before her. Her voice came quiet, almost like prayer. He gave me an entire world just because I cut a slice of toast. But the truth is, he was the one who taught me how to share the warmth that money could never buy. The camera lingered on her smile as the light deepened into gold, her silhouette framed by the morning glow. Somewhere outside, the sea whispered against the docks, the waves repeating her words in their own quiet language. A language that Gabriel Stone had once understood perfectly.